Live, you guys. Well, we already lost one, I see. One down already, but we're live. Welcome, everyone, to CASAA Live this week. There's Jim. We got him back. I see you guys out there in chat. Skip, Dale, Breezetones, Mallory, Christy, everybody. Hello, welcome. We definitely have a much bigger panel this week.
Look at all these people.
I know. Look at this. So we have a number of other board members here with us today to kind of discuss this week's stuff and things. We have Danielle Jones joining us. We have Mr. Matt Culley joining us.
Hi.
The always lovely Julie Woessner, and forever grumpy Jim McDonald.
How am I grumpy?
I'm more grumpy than I am.
I'm older.
Not by much.
I mean, you have the right to be this grumpy, but we're here to state facts today, Jim. Anyways, welcome everybody.
Just to be clear, we've got Danielle, CASAA's president, you, CASAA's vice president, Logan, and Matt is our secretary treasurer, and Julie wants to be nobody. Alex is our CEO. I am the member coordinator, and Jim is our
board member extraordinaire.
Our resident curmudgeon. I don't know.
That's a title that we
Director of Curmudgeon Services.
Writer extraordinaire.
Julie's already got fan club.
I'm still on the board of directors. So
yes, she is.
So we are doing a bit of a different format today, obviously, with all of the big topics to talk about. Just so folks know, I'm gonna do the legislative rundown at the end. If you are in Colorado, Connecticut, or Tennessee, and you want to stick around to hear what's happening next week, starting Monday, that'll be at the end. And of course, it'll be its own separate recording on our SoundCloud and other places where Logan uploads that. And so with that, do we want to jump right into this to make sure we're respectful of everybody's time?
Yeah, I would say let's get right into it. Let's get right into it.
Do you want to roll that beautiful deep dive footage?
You want me to roll the beautiful deep dive footage? Okay.
Let's do it.
I wasn't sure if I was going to use bumpers this week, but let's do the thing. I guess this qualifies as like a two-part deep dive this week. We're skipping takes. We're skipping all of that. We've got two real big major things to talk about. And we're going to start this week with Danielle, who has some data to share for us. So Danielle, we're going to give the floor to you. Let me know if or when or how or where you want a fancy graphic to go up, and just signal to me. Give me the bat signal and away it'll go.
Sounds good. As some of you may know, the CDC finally released their full MMWR on the National Youth Tobacco Survey numbers for 2021. This year was a little bizarre because we got sort of a preliminary release in the fall, which we usually get, and typically about a month later we'll receive this report. But for some reason, it was massively delayed, which was very extraordinary. You had the wonderful Brad Radu commenting on this as well. It was very bizarre that they waited this long. We got no, information about smoking numbers last year, nothing. It was really weird. So they finally released this report this week, basically, and it has some very interesting information. And strangely, and there's a number of articles that we can provide from Reason and various different places that talk about how bizarre it is that CDC and public health at large is not talking about the insanely low smoking numbers for youth. So high school and middle school is at basically non-existent levels. I think any country in the world would call this smoke-free, right? So it's just some really interesting data. I did go ahead and put up I made a fancy little graph that showed, Logan, if you want to pop that up on the screen. So I'm basically showing you smoking and vaping. This is for high school specifically, and for current use. So that means any use within the past 30 days of taking the survey from 2004 to 2021, which is the latest data that we just got. So the interesting things you'll see in the dark blue, that's your smoking rates. The green is your vaping rates. And then this cute little cigarette line that I've created is essentially what a predicted decline of smoking would have been before 2014. So the thing that you kind of you can notice in this data that something interesting happened in 2014, which caused the rate of decline for smoking to go way faster and way lower than anyone had predicted before. And if you speak to anyone, on this channel, we're going to tell you that had a lot to do with vaping. So you can see sort of the coinciding of the rise of vaping and the dramatic decline in smoking. And so yet again, we have seen, in 2021, so I've got overall numbers and high school numbers, but high school smoking for 2021 was 1.9% of high schoolers. That is insane. That is unheard of. That is epic. The overall rate for both high school and middle school combined was 1.5%. So these are, we thought last year was record low smoking. This dropped even further. It's kind of bananas, if I'm being honest. And the interesting thing about this is that if you look at the vaping numbers, you'll see that absolutely there was a peak in 2019, but numbers have continued to fall, basically. For high school, you've got the current use, which is any use in the past 30 days, now down to 11.3%. And by all accounts, that was before the numbers that we were seeing, the rates that we were seeing before a vape epidemic was ever declared by FDA and CDC. So we are now pre, vape epidemic levels. And so, yeah, this is the data. Feel free to, ask me anything or if you want to talk about different things. But I would say one of the things I really wanted to highlight in this was this sort of trend versus reality area, the area of the graph, which is basically the difference between what the projected rate of decline of smoking was and what the reality is. And there are a lot of intelligent people who will tell you that difference, the fact that there is a difference there, is largely because of the off-ramp that vaping has provided to young people, that it is more interesting to them to try out vaping than perhaps smoking. And it's actually decreasing smoking even faster than it was projected to be. So that's my spiel.
The only two reasons I can think of for why they might not be blasting out these cigarette numbers, because they are just freaking amazing. Probably better than anyone ever expected. Right. Is probably one, there's some nefarious reasons because of the gateway theory and stuff like that. It definitely disproves that issue. But also, when they came out with the vaping numbers, they really like to throw that caveat in that because of COVID, these might be skewed a little bit. So I don't think that they can prop up that 1.9% with cigarettes when they've already kind of discounted the vaping numbers lowering, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting because they did include a disclaimer with this year's 2021 rather's data that says, oh, well, because of lockdowns and because kids were, at home instead of at school, that you cannot compare this data to prior year's data. But at the same time, they also said, but we're also fully confident that this data is accurate. Yeah. So those two things don't really jive, right? If it's accurate, then why can you not compare it to prior years? That to me doesn't really make a lot of sense. And to your point, yeah, this completely disproves the gateway theory. If you look at this, so first off, smoking has continued to decline. There is maybe a small bump in 2018, but in actual numbers, it's like 8.1 to 8.6. It's not anything massively significant. So there's a tiny bump in 2018, but overall, it is a massive decline. And interestingly, even as vaping numbers have declined, smoking is still going down. So, even one of the things that we were worried about, right, is that with all of these laws and all of these regulations that kids were going to vape less because everyone was going to vape less, right, because access is denied. And then we would see smoking, go back up to compensate, which still could happen. But interestingly, it hasn't happened. So even as they're vaping less, they're still dramatically smoking less. I just think there is no feasible logical argument anymore for the gateway theory. I don't see it.
Yeah.
And yet,
Right?
Can I
Go ahead, Jim.
mention something here?
Yeah.
Just to be clear, what we're talking about are past 30-day smoking numbers.
Right.
So this is
least
anybody
one puff.
taking even one drag off a cigarette in the past 30 days.
Right.
Daily smoking, or not even daily smoking, but smoking on 20 or more days of the month for high school students was down to 0.4%, which is 1 out of every 250.
Yep.
Jeez.
So I think one of the reasons you haven't seen smoking go back up as vaping has become harder to access is that the usual reason that kids start smoking, which is their friends are doing it, or they're trying to be cool or whatever, nobody else is doing it. So
Yeah.
it's
I think-
just unlikely to crank
I think the
itself up
2020
from scratch.
I think the 2022 data is going to be the most telling. Like, is this
yeah.
an outlier year because of COVID? But now that just about every school is back, that's 2022 is going to be super intriguing to check out.
I wouldn't be surprised if everything goes back up a little bit.
Yeah, it could go back up a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
and that may be also why they don't want to prop this up too much, because they're expecting stuff to rebound a bit. But I mean, if it still kind of follows the trend.
But folks, they've never had a good word to say about smoking declining as vaping has increased.
No.
Yeah.
So you can go back to 2014, which was the first, I think, double-digit year for
Drop.
past
Yeah.
30-day vaping in high school. Tom Frieden, who was the head of the CDC then, made a huge deal out of the vaping, but he didn't even mention that smoking was at its lowest rate ever.
Right.
It's been, at that point or lower since then. It went up 1 year, but it didn't go up to an above 2014 level. So.
And what's really interesting, and I think what they'll do is that the data is suspect and you can't really trust it when it comes to the good things, the good news, but it's 100%, accurate and trustworthy in that 2.55 million kids are using tobacco.
Right.
So that for that number, you won't see them bring up that little disclaimer, but if we start pushing things like, oh, look at all the smoking rates going down, they'll bring up that little disclaimer, but
Right.
But I do agree with Matt. I think we're going to have to wait and see until 2022.
Yeah.
Because these numbers, they're strange. It's been a strange year.
And there is an argument to be made, right? That some kids, obviously get product from their friends, right? In a social setting at school. And if they don't have access to those friends at school, they're not using the product. So like everybody said, I wouldn't be surprised at a small bump next year. I don't think it's going to be major because like what Jim said, once you're not smoking anymore, there's not really a big draw to go back to it. You know what I mean? Like it's easy to keep doing it if it's available to you readily, your friends are doing it. But once you've stopped, for a while in vaping as well for the young people, I don't know that there's going to be a huge uptick again.
And I think, this is past 30 days. That's going to fluctuate all the time.
Right.
I think if you look at the frequent vaping and frequent smoking, where those are kids who are going to get it either way. They're daily users, and they're not the ones who are getting it from their friends for a puff in the last 30 days. Those numbers looked good too.
Right.
Those numbers were going down too.
Those are the numbers we should care about. From a public health standpoint, the fact that a kid took a puff off of somebody's vape at a party
right
concerns me not even a little bit as a parent.
Right.
What we're really interested in is the kids who are using it more frequently.
Yeah. And now that I have a teen, it's kind of interesting really seeing this up close. And that is how most of the vaping is, especially with disposables. Because she's pretty open with me, tells me about, how it all works there. It's like they pass it around at a party and there's, 15 different kids puffing on one single vape or so,
Nick,
And
I'm
it,
far
it's
more
almost,
concerned about germs.
yeah, I know.
That really is very scary.
We wonder why they get mono and shit like
Right.
that. But and yeah, she said it's almost completely from, they have dealers at school that sell these things.
So I think it's interesting to see that as the past 30-day vaping use goes down, that as a percentage of the total, you have more kids who are vaping frequently. And I think that's a good thing, because what you're seeing is the ones who vape frequently are probably the ones who smoked
Right.
Mhm.
or would have smoked.
Or would have smoked.
And
Right.
now they're vaping instead. And although that number looks larger, it's like 25% of the total or whatever, maybe even more than that. I don't remember. What you're seeing is just a mass exodus from combustible cigarettes.
Yeah.
And
Neither
That's what that
vaping-
study out of the UK just said, that it was that totally blanking on the word right now, when they had liability,
Common liability.
common liability. Thank you. That pretty much the kids who were vaping most likely would have smoked, and that's not leading them to smoking at all. There's no gateway.
yeah, the regular
just came out.
vapors, yeah.
And
Yeah,
for
like us.
CDC and for all of the campaigns, there's really no motivation to dig into this data, because that, again, just like gateway, erodes at their talking point that these products are hooking kids who wouldn't have otherwise smoked, and so
Yeah.
this refutes that pretty positively.
Yeah, they don't want to know. So
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't fit their narrative. And I think we've all seen that the government feels quite comfortable giving us information in a way that makes their point. Whether it's accurate or not, they're doing it for our own good.
Yeah.
Right.
That was said with heavy sarcasm.
Right.
About for our own good. I don't believe it's ever appropriate to lie or misstate the facts for somebody's own good. It gets you into a lot of trouble. Unless
I
you're
thought it was weird how, just the other day, Dr. Radu was tweeting and did a post and said, "Where is this data?
Where's the
Why are
data?"
we
Right.
and then just before they passed this whole synthetic nicotine thing, it's like in the last minute, so it couldn't be used for anything. All of a sudden it pops up and you're like,
Right.
just enough to make the headlines of 2.55 million kids are still vaping and it's a health concern.
Yeah.
And nobody had time to dig into it and say, hey, but that's a conspiracy theorist in me. So,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, those are the real conspiracy. Like, people always think government's blatantly lying, but really they're better at half truths and kind of forming.
Yeah, true.
Like,
Yeah.
especially with I love science, but you could take data and prove all kinds of different points, and that's why there's always so much argument over all kinds of different scientific debates.
yeah. I wish vapors would stop saying stuff like, but we have the science. Why aren't we winning? The science is all over the place. There's all kinds. You can cherry pick thousands of studies that have bad things to say about vaping, and they do. So,
Yeah.
But nobody looks at the people who, like Kristen and me, have been vaping for well more than a decade.
Yeah.
I have not grown a third leg yet. Everybody should be very happy. And I haven't had pneumonia since I quit smoking.
Julie, we just need you to donate one of your lungs so we can.
For science.
But I need it because I'm out of hiking. So, and riding my bike, because I now can do that. Anyway.
I would say nobody's looking at that except for apparently Ricardo Pelosa, who
Right.
has now published, I think it's 2 kind of follow-up studies or reports of their longitudinal studies. I think one is 3 years and the other is 5 years, and this is specifically focusing on people with COPD and noticing the health improvements that people are experiencing. So that's out there. That's also available on CASAA's information library. So go check it out, CASAA.org information library. I'll walk you through how to get there if you want.
This one down here keeping that up.
I was just going to say, yeah, Alex, if you wanted to pull that up so everybody could
Let's
see.
show everyone, because I also added a new section this week and we should talk about that real quick.
Oh, sure.
There we go.
There's
It's
the
under
fancy
resources,
map.
information library. Boom, there you go. Research, data, articles. What do we do? Health effects? Is that where this one is?
Yeah, the COPD stuff should be under health effects. And here you are. I've organized it into two primary sections. We've got science, and then we've got sort of news, blogs type. And then within those two categories, I've broken it down even further by, cessation, people who study vaping for cessation reasons, health effects, all kinds of different. But the new section that we've added is the recommended reading section. So if anybody out there is trying to create a tobacco harm reduction book club, I've got you covered right here. Here's your entire reading list for I don't even know how long, at least a year, probably. These are thanks to the CASAA board for helping to contribute to this list. But these are some of the best books out there written by people that you know and love all about this issue.
It's cool.
And they link to the Amazon page so that you can, most of them are available in physical form and like Kindle form or e-reader form. So there you go.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All the science right there.
Did we have any more questions, comments, discussion about the NYTS data? I'm sure we're not really doing it all the justice that an academic panel would do, but grassroots AF.
Yep.
So should we continue on with this or get right into the nitty-gritty synthetic nicotine?
I think I'm good if you guys are good.
I was just going to defer to Danielle on that one, but if Danielle's kind of through all the data and talking points she wanted to get through, I'd say we can move right along.
And yeah, we'll see. You guys will start seeing stuff. Danielle between stuff. Danielle and I are like data nerds when it comes to this report coming out.
So many spreadsheets, you guys. So
we're
many.
usually like trading in the background, trading spreadsheets. So you'll start seeing stuff coming out from CASAA. Hopefully Danielle will be able to make some more pretty graphics, just start making points and stuff as we come across these things. That hopefully we'll have some memes and stuff for you guys to share and use. And to kind of throw at people. So we'll work on that in the coming weeks.
There was some really interesting breakdowns. We don't have time to get into it now, but they also asked and published, because they may ask a lot of questions, but they don't always publish information on basically mental health issues. Right. They had the students rate themselves. So it's self-reported, but they had them rate themselves on, mental health, whether they feel like they have no issues, mild issues, severe issues, and then also compared those to, the usage of different tobacco products. So we've got some mental health, we've got race information, we've got LGBTQ information. So I'm definitely planning on digging into a lot of this.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I guess that brings us up to our next topic, which is synthetic nicotine. Jim recently put out an excellent article on this. I am
putting the link in there right now.
Thank you. And I was wondering, Jim, if you could kind of give us the rundown of what just happened regarding the omnibus bill and synthetic nicotine and FDA. Give us the rundown, Jim. What is going on? So first the House and then the Senate passed the omnibus spending bill, which is it just keeps the government running until the end of this fiscal year. So until the end of September. And as part of that, as always happens with these bills, all kinds of unrelated legislation gets shoved in there. And among the things that were shoved in there is this language that gives the FDA authority over nicotine from any source. So it's not just synthetic nicotine, it's any form of nicotine sold in a consumer product is now the FDA's thing to regulate. So there is no vegetable-derived nicotine. People talk about this all the time. It could be done. You could genetically engineer peppers or tomatoes or eggplants to produce nicotine for extraction, but nobody's done it yet. If they do, it's now regulated by the FDA. I was just gonna say, you see online a lot of people make the tomato and eggplant. comparisons of
I even see people say our e-liquid that we sell is made from tomatoes. And
It's absolutely not. I
It's
mean,
not.
the amount of nicotine that's actually in most nightshade plants outside of tobacco is so minuscule. Like the amount of that vegetable you would need and the process that you would need to
They're
get.
lying.
They got a couple hundred workers in a warehouse out back just stomping tomatoes 24/7.
It looks like an Ocean Spray commercial.
you would need somebody told me this once, a chemist.
I remember
You would need a whole truck, like a semi, full of tomatoes to make enough nicotine to make like a bottle of e-liquid. So it's just not there yet. But anyway, we're really getting aside here. So the language in the bill gives the FDA authority over all nicotine. It's going to take effect 30 days after President Biden signs it. It looks like, according to Paul Blair, that's going to be Monday or Tuesday. It has to be by Tuesday because they also passed a short-term thing to keep things going.
Extension.
Tuesday. Anyway, after Biden signs it, you'll have 30 days before it takes effect. And then after that, there's an additional 30 days before anybody who wants to remain on the market any longer has to file a pre-market tobacco application, a PMTA.
I did before you go further there, Jim. I did just want to double check the timeline here.
Yeah.
I have this written on our call to action, and this, of course, adapted from Paul's tweet.
Right.
So it's 30 days from an enactment. Enactment is the effective date. 30 days from the effective date is when PMTA applications are due. And then 90 days from the effective date is the deadline for FDA to issue marketing orders. Just want to make sure I got that right.
Which they're not going to do.
So the longest anybody is going to have before products have to come off the market or have received authorization is 120 days, 4 months.
So I guess, can FDA, though, do what they've done in the past where they basically say, we're not going to get this stuff done in time, so we're going to enforce, or no, we're going to exercise enforcement discretion until we're done?
Yeah, they could do that. And that's, I believe, something that industry people are hoping for or possibly working toward. The thing is, everybody who has synthetic nicotine products on the market right now is going to have 60 days total to sell them without worrying about enforcement, whether they submit a PMTA or not.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, we're into the PMTAs.
And that's only an additional 60 days. And I can't say for certain, but it would shock me to my core if within 90 days FDA issued any approvals on synthetic nicotine. Just shock me.
Yeah, so they're either going to like just do a whole batch, deny thing like they did before, but then potentially have legal troubles, or extend it out. But then I guess the big question is, are they going to make these people pull the products off the market, or let them have enforcement discretion and not mess with them until they have a decision?
So, nobody knows what they're going to do, of course. I'm going to be very curious to see what happens with all the C-store disposable products that are on the market right now. Not just Puff Bar, but all of Puff Bar's cousins.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of those are conventional nicotine, regular tobacco-derived nicotine, and these C-stores and smoke shops don't care, or even probably most of them don't even know,
That's right.
True.
I think it's easy for the FDA to focus on dedicated vape shops and online sellers because that's all that's, they don't have to worry about anything else when they deal with them. And it seems like, vaping businesses are getting more attention than C-stores, which are selling all kinds of stuff that was never submitted
Yeah.
you know, with the PMTA.
I don't know if any of you can answer this, but Sean Casey's asking, is it correct that people without existing product with MDOs can't resubmit new PMTAs?
You can't resubmit identical products that were only changed in the form of nicotine they used.
That were already rejected, right, with
Right.
MDOs.
So if
Okay.
you come out with a synthetic version of the same product, same name, same ingredients, that can't be resubmitted with a new PMTA.
If you've already
However-
been denied.
However, you have between now and 30 days from when Biden signs it to introduce new synthetic products
Yeah.
that have different ingredients and different names.
So that company can still submit, just it's got to be for new products.
It's got to be, it can't be for a product that already received a
Yeah.
marketing denial
But of
order.
course, you know, this kind of beggars the question of whether anybody's got time to submit a robust PMTA.
Yeah.
I would imagine that a lot of those companies
them
already have it. You know, they're just going to change some stuff in and out if they
Right.
already have kind of their template. And again, I know we're not giving any legal advice, but some of them might purposefully do it just in order to sue
Agree.
the FDA once they're denied.
Right. And there's still, you know, lawsuits out there.
And there
Yeah.
are probably companies that closed or, you know, withdrew their registrations before all of the lawsuits after the MDOs that might be regretting that and wishing they could get back into the business now. I'm not saying they should do that. I'm just saying there may be some people out there who are
Yeah, and
gonna-
how do we know any kind of timeline on some of these existing lawsuits? Because a lot's going to hinge on that. If there's some wins,
Yeah, I mean,
then there's
some of these are going to be happening soon, but some of them aren't scheduled to be heard till summertime, or and some of them aren't scheduled at all.
yeah.
So this is probably going to be going on for many, many months, if not years.
I mean, even people who don't care about vaping, this should really concern them that Congress did this. I mean, the idea that you can just forget the science, don't have anything that supports what you're doing whatsoever, and just completely change the process. I mean,
Yeah, but on face value, though, if you don't know anything about it, it just looks like a loophole, and it makes complete sense for them to
Right.
to then put synthetic nicotine in with regular nicotine. Now, obviously, our issue is that the FDA is completely incapable of regulating these products properly, so we don't want to give them even more oversight. But if I'm Joe Schmo and I don't know anything about it, I'm going to be like, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, they're just closing the
right. But and I understand what you're saying, and I agree completely. But what I was saying is that it's not just closing a loophole. They put a bunch of stuff in there that okay, you've got 60 days to get your PMTA in. You've got, I mean, all this stuff was things that it took years for the FDA to come up with, that they just threw that away and said, nope, here's what we're going to do because we want to punish these people for doing this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think they're probably.
That should concern people that Congress is just, screw the science.
But nobody cares about punishing loophole people. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how this is publicly perceived. And they
Yeah.
gave bare minimum, which I don't even think is sufficient on any score, but they gave kind of just, yeah, you got
Well,
30 days.
Don't you guys think
Yeah.
that there might be room for lawsuits based on the fact that Congress has completely thrown out the Administrative Procedure Act?
That's what I
Oh,
was
the
saying.
rulemaking. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean,
that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at. They're skipping over all of that.
Because this isn't a product. This isn't the same thing that was just like, that people were like scamming the FDA. It's a different product. It's not tobacco.
Right.
The Tobacco Control Act was meant to regulate tobacco. This is not tobacco. So the FDA, in my opinion, should have to go through its normal procedures under the Administrative Procedure Act.
Deeming, like I
regulate
was
it.
talking about earlier.
Yeah.
well, but
I was asking you guys about that.
Congress does write the rules, right? I mean, they're the ones who with the able
But they-
assistance of Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids and Philip Morris, wrote the Tobacco Control Act to begin with. But I do think that there are some legal challenges. I'm going to be really looking forward to seeing what some of the more seasoned attorneys representing industry players come up with. I think there's going to be some
me
good
too.
stuff.
Yeah, and
Well, I
I
don't-
agree
I
with
don't-
Matt. Like, Joe Schmo doesn't care that FDA just got regulatory authority over synthetic nicotine.
Right.
Joe Schmo doesn't care. But I think Joe Schmo or the average American should be concerned with the lack of democratic process that goes into this with
That's what
these
I meant,
omnibus spending bills and legislation just kind of being slid in there completely unrelated to keeping the government functioning for a year.
That's typical, but yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that is a key point for the average American to be concerned with, whether you were talking about nicotine or whatever. That's a concerning thing.
Well,
I mean,
I-
whether
Yeah,
it's
this
putting, I mean,
is so it,
Go ahead.
I don't know how long it's going to take for the electorate to be fed up with this, but it is, as Kristen noted, this is sort of standard operating procedure in state houses and in Congress. New York was a good example of this. The flavor ban was tucked into the state's budget bill. That was, there's all kinds of, we've just been in a state of emergency for like 2 or 3 years now. So of course, there's lots of pressure for governments to pass their budgets to do things like, fund a COVID response, fund, the effort in Ukraine and whatever. And so these things must pass. We must fund the government so that state parks and other services stay open. And it's done very hastily and quickly at the last minute. And for, specific to synthetic nicotine, I understand that many in Congress are willing to accept the propaganda handed to them by Philip Morris and Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, which should be referred to as a singular entity at this point, and just accept that the loopholers need to be punished. But this is, as Jim mentioned, a different product. It doesn't have the same supply chain. It doesn't have the same manufacturing issues. Arguably, it is something that should go through review just to highlight the potential difference in environmental impact for producing synthetic nicotine. This bill, this language didn't receive a committee hearing. There was absolutely no engagement with the public. And as usual, no engagement with the primary stakeholders, which is us. And it was slipped into this must-pass bill with no debate, no daylight, and voted on rather hastily and with just the cold, calculated procedural actions of balancing your checkbook at the kitchen table. It was pretty disheartening to see this. And
they did the same thing to us with the vape mail bill as well. And
a little different. The vape mail bill was debated and passed in the House and passed in the Senate.
Yeah.
In slightly different versions before it was put into the Senate.
And half the people, at least, who voted on this probably didn't even know that this was in here.
No, it's like almost 3,000 pages long.
Well, I'm assuming what FDA will say is that they have already deemed e-cigarettes. So now that they have jurisdiction, it's just so weird because there's nothing, there's no precedent here, I don't think. Now that they have jurisdiction over synthetic nicotine, they don't need to do any future deeming because
because Congress writes the laws. I mean, the thing that's kind of frustrating, one of the many things that's frustrating about this is it's the same kind of thing when we were expecting deeming. That was coming down the pipes for quite some time. We were all speculating, what was it going to look like? It never in people's wildest thoughts occurred that somehow a vape device with no nicotine component, I'm not talking about disposables or anything else, I'm just talking about a vape device, somehow that could be a tobacco product. I mean, or no nic. Could be regulated. The whole thing is just really bizarre. And they've made it into this, and it's because it's a moral panic with, the children who are vaping less and less.
Yeah. Which I find interesting because I saw that I was in a Twitter conversation with somebody who had said, "Oh, this is an interesting week, and we've got the survey data just came out, and they just closed this loophole." And I tweeted back at her and I said, "Well, number 2 on that, the survey data pretty much negates the necessity for number 3, the synthetic nicotine thing. And she's like, well, I call BS because that had nothing to do with youth use. That was just closing a loophole, bad actors. And I said, oh, really? Here's the press releases from all I'm talking about flavors from synthetic nicotine. So people out there just don't, I use my hands too much. I'm Irish.
Well, but in fairness, though, there were a number of industry players who kind of thumbed their nose.
Right, but she thought it had nothing to do with youth use, which I thought was really interesting. That I'm like, oh wow, you know, how are people? We have to stop and think sometimes. How are people outside of our bubbles? I don't mean you guys. I mean as advocates.
Well,
we have to think outside of our bubbles of how are other people viewing us and the things that we say. And I have this conversation a lot with folks about, you know, blaming parents, you know, and stuff. And so that's one of those things that kind of went, people aren't seeing this loophole thing as being something that's tied to the flavor teen thing. You know, she didn't, and she's a doctor and she didn't see that. So I thought, well, that's interesting. I wonder where that perspective came from. Why are they not seeing it that way? So, yeah.
Well, another thing, Sean Casey made the point that it's kind of hard for industry players to fund a legal challenge when their businesses are getting ready to be wiped out. And I just want to say, I fully appreciate that, but there is strength in numbers. I think there will be opportunities for larger group efforts. I hope that's something that the industry is working on.
Well, I think you're 100% going for an injunction too. Just like, you know, with these, let's say FDA doesn't give any kind of enforcement discretion, and they don't finish PMTAs on synthetic, and so they just tell everybody to pull their crap off the market. That's when you sue and you try to get that injunction, like what Triton did or something. But yeah, if you don't get it, then you might not be able to see the whole thing through.
Yeah, I mean, it's very frustrating.
So Julie, you're a lawyer. Let me ask you. Let me put you on the spot here.
Not practicing, haven't practiced for decades.
Not legal advice.
Julie is a Duke University law school graduate.
Yeah, well,
so,
whatever.
You're kind of a big deal, Julie.
Does Congress does write the rules, Congress writes the laws, and we know that. Does Congress have the ability to override the Administrative Procedure Act, which is supposed to cover all federal agencies, and say it doesn't have to be followed in this instance?
One would think not. However, that is a matter for a judge to decide. You know, I mean, none of this is easy. And that was not my area of practice. So,
I know it wasn't, and I was just kind of kidding you. I just went on to that.
I know. I mean, it's just kind of like, damn, you guys write the rules and then you just change them midstream or ignore them.
Yeah.
And, you know, I do think that there are some legal challenges. I do think that there are some intelligent people who are working on this, not me. But, you know, I do think that there are going to be some decent legal challenges. I mean, because that's really the play at this point. There aren't that many plays. You know, one thing I would like to talk about is how this impacts consumers, which is, after all, who we represent.
Yeah.
You know, and certainly as we watch businesses exiting this space or kind of retooling, we've seen a massive retooling towards, like, for example, CBD. I mean, that's, you know, huge in our space. But as we see people exit and people caught up, you know, what is this going to mean for consumers?
Well, maybe not a direct answer to that. And I think, you know, we had some talk pre-show about where consumers can go in order to continue getting product. But, you know, one of the bills that I'll be talking about in the legislative rundown is in Tennessee, and we've seen this in other places. And it's this proposal to make a product registry. And this would be for, you know, basically any product that has received any kind of marketing authorization, provisional or as a result of PMTA authorization. They would be on this list maintained by the state. And then these bills effectively make the states an enforcement arm of the FDA. And so these are bills that are being promoted by RJ Reynolds, Altria, I think Juul is also supporting these, essentially all of the big money companies that feel confident their products are going to get through PMTA. For them, they will present this to the public as, this is corporate stewardship. They're defending their brands, they're defending the space from bad actors. But the reality is that this is sort of, FDA's regulatory scheme is failing. It has failed. And now it's being, pushed into the states so that, the federal government isn't on the hook for enforcing their bad regulations.
Yeah,
This has been
Big
happening.
Tobacco was just kind of playing the game, and I mean, I think that their shareholders would be pretty upset if they didn't fight something like that. So,
Right.
from a business standpoint, it obviously makes tons of sense, even though we hate it.
Right.
But this has been in play for a few years now. I mean, this is nothing
Right.
new. And this is something that CASAA identified very early on as a potential problem. And in fact, we were scolded by some industry players. And I'm not talking about the majors. I'm talking about definitely the minors. We were scolded.
Were we
because
scolded?
We were scolded. We were. Well, at least I was.
Oh.
Because this was something that showed that they were responsible business people and all of this. And this is when people had legitimate thought, like, I can get a PMTA. I can spend a lot of time and a lot of money and take this seriously. I'm not doing this on the back of a cocktail napkin. I'm doing this very seriously, and I have a good chance of getting a PMTA. So, they were in favor of some additional regulation, which they felt would, promote the view that they're responsible players. But we fought it since day one. Day one, we fought those because it's just a registry. And if you're not on the registry, they can go after you. FDA might move slowly. States can move faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far as access to consumers, I think it's obviously FDA's enforcement has been lacking. They could step that up, but I mean, there's a good chance you're going to see vape shops selling, illegal product for years. But at the same time, there's a lot of vape shops that will just go out of business because they don't like uncertainty. So when it's time to sign that next 3-year lease, well, I don't know what's going to happen with synthetic. Maybe FDA is going to step up enforcement. I'm not going to take the chance. And that's kind of what we saw in 2016 too, where it was just people jumping out, on their own beforehand, as opposed to FDA really forcing anybody's hand.
Well, I also want to make the point that's just so painfully obvious to me, but I've heard a lot of people speculating about it. And the point is that as consumers, I don't have a problem buying something that is illegal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, FDA isn't going to come in and bang down my door. I'm not going to prison. I'm not getting any fines. I'm not going to get any scare letters. So I'm going to continue to buy products from the industry players who are willing to sell them in the shops and the online stores. And I'm going to do that up until the bitter end. So.
Yeah. And I think people need to understand that there's no enforcement against individuals buying or using vapor products or making.
Yeah.
It's only commercial businesses.
Right. So I should also mention that I have no problem making my own e-liquids. So
I do it too.
Yeah. I
The
mean,
trick is now at this point, it's kind of hard to get nicotine. And
That's true.
folks, if you're interested in DIY, there are sources out there for this stuff. We're not going to name
legitimate
them.
sources.
What's that?
Legitimate.
Sources.
Well, they're legitimate for the moment. But
Right.
I'm saying there are, because of the shipping restrictions, it's not as easy to get just raw nicotine as it was.
Not
but there are
impossible.
people selling
but-
it. There are people shipping it possibly illegally. And if you go
I've sold
looking,
stuff through
if
the
you, go
mails.
looking, if you do a little searching, you'll find it.
Right.
I'm curious. Is it easier to find nicotine base than it is to find a Vuse?
That's a tough question.
I mean,
That
I think
is-
it's still,
That's a good question.
today it's still easier to even buy just pre-made products than buy bulk nicotine, probably because you got places in Canada that are still shipping to the US and they don't care, obviously. You got places in China and in Europe that are shipping to the US.
Well,
So
you've
it's
got
still
American companies too.
yeah, and there's American companies doing it as well, but a lot of the big, ones are now they're not shipping every state, and they're using those alternative.
The shipping is tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, but Jim's point is well made. If you have any interest in do it yourself, now is the time. And, I think the message is that no matter what, I mean, even if it's getting a lousy tobacco flavored e-liquid that successfully somehow navigated the PMTA, you can still flavor it at home.
Sure.
That's pretty easy. There are always going to be options for the people who are willing to look for them and maybe extend themselves a little bit. What I'm more concerned about are the rank and file. They're not passionate vapors. They're just people who smoke or used to smoke. They're looking to save a little bit of money, maybe save their lives. But if it gets too weird, they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
I'll
the
tell our
overwhelming
viewers-
majority of vapors too. And if their vape shop closes down, they're not going to try to, find, not everyone, at least some might, but especially folks that maybe aren't internet savvy or something, they're not going to go through all those hoops to try to get what they want.
70-year-old
They're not going to
grandma.
trust it if they feel like it's illegal. What if there's
They
fentanyl
might
in
misunderstand.
it?
Vaping didn't really take off. In the very beginning, we were in a total gray area. We weren't legal, but we weren't illegal. So we were kind of legal, but there weren't shops. So you had to order online, and people just didn't want to do it. It was like, well, what if I don't like it? I can't get my money back. Stuff like the hardware was coming. You'd order like 5 atomizers and 3 would be dead on arrival. I mean, it was a really tough thing, and you had to be very dedicated to go through that. And it wasn't really until we started seeing reliable supply chains, vape shops, that vaping really took off. That was the big push. And, this concerns me.
Well, and it is unfortunate that, these conventional vape shops are going to have a really hard time, even now, but even before this nicotine bill passed, but they are going to have a hard time competing with the smoke shops. The disposable companies can change new names and, have a new product out every couple of months and just keep cycling them through. And if one gets, grounded by the FDA, the next one will come out. But vape shops aren't going to be that nimble, and once they get a target, it's kind of hard for them to get away with.
Well, and plus they're worried about having stock that somebody comes in and seizes.
Right.
Yeah. So it is going to be a scary time, but I do think that there are shops who can survive. I firmly believe that. I know of a few shops now that specialize mostly in tobacco flavors, and we tend to think of tobacco as a monolithic flavor. Just there is one tobacco. And the truth is there are lots of different tobacco flavors. Some of them are actually quite light. Some of them taste like licking an ashtray. But,
some of them they tried
tobacco.
to make taste like
Tobacco
licking
and
an
menthol.
ashtray.
But we also don't know that that's going to be a long-term solution either, because some of those it doesn't mean all the tobacco flavors are going to get approved either.
It does not, because some of them, even if they're sold as tobacco flavor 3,
They have fruits or desserts
the
mixed
reason
in.
why it tastes so delicious is because it's got peach in it.
Yeah.
So, we're in for a rough ride. I think the ones who will definitely survive this are the majors. No doubt about it. Altria, Reynolds, Juul.
Yeah. I mean, to me, just the most compelling thing is going to be the legal stuff this year with the already, the MDO stuff. And if anybody does try anything,
I think they will.
broader against this whole, I think maybe the better chance is the MDO route, like people are doing, but I'm not a lawyer, so I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm probably the most unsavvy when it comes to vaping for being an advocate. I have always tried to keep it. You remember, Julie, Drew was always like, here, take a mod. I'm like, I don't need a mod, and so I'm very basic. And I did stock up on nicotine just before the post office thing, but I'm one of those people that I'm my local vape shop. We have one vape shop in our town. We're an hour away from any other vape shops. They are carrying 100% synthetic nicotine since the post office thing came through. I did try to get George to come on, and he unfortunately wasn't able to. But I'm waiting to hear back from him on what they're planning on doing now that this is happening. Now I know I've got about 30, 60 days. If I want, I can start looking online and see if somebody carries my liquid, and I can stock up as cheap as possible, if I can, places who are still shipping, which even after the post office thing happened, I'm still able to get stuff from online. So it didn't end up being this complete thing, but a lot of it was because it was either they were switched to synthetic and they took the position, and you read it on their websites, they took the position, well, this is not a tobacco product, so it doesn't fall under PACT Act. I thought, oh, well, that's an interesting way to go.
The PACT Act covers all vaping products.
Right, but that. I'm not saying that was right. I'm saying that seemed to be their position, that it was okay for them to ship that, and they only wanted a $6 fee for signing for adult signature. But I also know, like, my adult son lives up in Michigan, and a lot of places, one of my favorite liquids was getting still shipped up there because they did not have any kind of tax on vapor products yet. So some companies were still shipping to states who didn't have a tax, which I thought was interesting, or a ban on flavors. So Michigan didn't have either. Mark actually can talk about that. Hi, Mark. He just popped in. But so one of the reasons that I kind of wanted to get all this together was there's so many of us, people like me, we're like, well, where am I going to get liquid now? Is the world coming to an end? Am I just going to go back to smoking? I had my little rage after this all happened a couple of days ago on Twitter, and some people saw me have my little meltdown. I'm like, all right, I'm back. We're going to be okay now. Get to work, And so I wanted to sort of talk about this as far as sources. And so now you guys have heard there are some sources, like you can get in DIY. I kind of prefer not to. I'd rather save those 2 jugs of Nick that I have no idea what to do with, and keep getting my liquids. And so there's forums that you can go on. There's our groups. I just saw the other day that one of our members on Facebook, I think, or Twitter, had asked a question, and they're in New York. And I said, hey, go to our New York group and post in there. But and I'm sure people help you. And sure enough, within minutes, people are like, I'll send you a message, whatever, we'll take care of you. There's people in our chat right now who are talking about, hey, I'll get you stuff if you need it. So don't despair. There are going to be ways to still do this if you don't want to start DIYing. Julie made a good point. There's actually a lot of really good tobacco flavors, and I'd be remiss to say, well, I just hate them or whatever. I haven't tried them, so maybe I need to start getting in there. But like, my local vape shop doesn't carry any tobacco flavors that I know of, so they still have to get that too. So it's going to be a lot of juggling around, and just like it was with the post office thing. But I really think that we can do it, and we're a community, and that's one thing that we have going for us, is that we're a community. And there's always, if you go online, even just on Twitter or to one of our groups or to one of the online groups, and you post in that you need help. I have seen Julie, like, on ECF over the years, somebody would come on and be like, I need help with this. And there'd be people sending you stuff. Here, I broke my mom. What am I going to do? Oh, I'll send you one.
Listen, I remember driving 30 minutes to meet this woman whose last atomizer had died. And I drove 30 minutes to meet her. I mean, the community was much smaller back in those days, but there are options.
Yeah, I think it's good to have those backup plans, but I mean, also keep supporting the retailers you're already buying from.
Right.
If you have a local vape shop or whatever. And this doesn't mean you're going to see every shop close down in 90 days. It's just, again, we don't know what the FDA is going to do. Just looking at their patterns, their enforcement's usually lacking.
So also, in addition to that, a lot of people are talking as though synthetic nicotine is everything, and it's not. There's lots of products that have received stays from Port or from the FDA itself on their MDOs. There are people who are suing that have, gotten injunctions and have products legally on it. There's lots of legal product on the market right now.
I think
Why?
that was something that we included in the language in the engagement was, there's still something like 55,000 products out there that are currently legal to be
Pending.
marketed
Yeah.
because they're waiting for a decision from FDA.
I also still want to point out that it is completely still legal for private citizens to ship up to 10 lightweight packages per month through USPS to other private citizens, so
Yeah.
long as there is no commercial value, no exchange of money. The community can still help other community members out through the US postal system legally. So that is 10 lightweight shipments per
Yeah.
month. So remember that, you guys, that if you have friends, and I'm seeing in chat, like, don't come in chat on YouTube and ask people where to get stuff. Don't do that, you guys.
Don't do
This
that.
is not, we're underground.
Highlight it.
Okay.
Just highlight it for enforcement.
Right. So don't do that.
DM,
Talk to
DM.
people privately. Understand that even Facebook groups are monitored by Facebook for keywords. So consider that, but talk to people. I mean, if somebody were to come up to you and say, how would you get XYZ that's not available on the legal market, right? You're not going to post on the internet. You're going to find a friend you trust and ask them. This is the same protocol, and we can still help each other without breaking the law. I just wanted to remind everyone of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
And I'm going to
Ton of
point
Liberty's
out,
right. Like that's always
what
how
I'm
these
saying.
are. Like it's the smokers that get screwed in this. Like we'll
Yeah.
all be
Right.
fine most likely, but it's the smokers.
yeah, I'm just going to read that for our listeners later on. It says he said it's easy for vapors to help other vapors, but this is screwing the smokers who might one day decide to stop killing themselves. And that is true. But one of the points I did want to make is that the cigalikes that a lot of them will start with that are tobacco or menthol flavored are still going to be readily available for most of them in the gas station. I mean, a lot of these laws are, which is good, and thank God. And that's one of the things, Julie, years ago when we first started with CASAA, when we started building CASAA, it was sort of a fake it till you make it sort of thing, and it was get enough people to start vaping. That vaping is just so known, there's so many people vaping that it's never going to go away. And the fact that, I mean, could you imagine back then, Julie, just you walk into any gas station and there's like 4 or 5 different kinds of cigalikes in there, and that was you never would have seen that.
I remember talking to somebody with a tobacco company who said, we will never do this. Never. And I think they probably had it in the pipelines. They're always trying different things. But I think Kristen's point is well made. There are a lot of people who, just don't want to fuss with too much. They'll be happy with the cigalikes and disposable
Tobacco, Jewel.
to get. And in the convenience stores, it's a shame, though, because there's going to be a significant portion of that population that, like me, would not have been satisfied with that, who really, in order to fully quit, needed something more.
Right.
And we're going to lose them. Maybe we'll go back to like the old days, having like little vape meets. Like, I'm not talking about like the big vape events. I'm talking like in St. Louis, we used to have a monthly meeting, and we'd meet at a bar. And we'd swap liquids, and somebody would bring a friend who smoked, and boy, we'd just stock them up, and it's very grassroots AF.
Yeah, we might get back to, I was just thinking that we might have to get back to that. In those early days, you were constantly an ambassador. You're out at a bar or something, and people are like, what is that? What do you have in your hand? And back then it was just a little 510 and it had a little blue light on the end of it. And, in the early days, and we're going to have to get back for people who smoke. We're going to have to get back to being ambassadors again, make sure they don't get lost in the shuffle. If they do need help, and they may do like I did in the early days when I, back in 2009, when I bought that, what was it called? VIP something or other. It looked like a cigarette. It had the white battery with the tip and the red LED. I tried it. It wasn't quite doing it for me. And I went online and started Googling. And so, more of those people will start showing up. And, maybe CASAA will be able to help with some of that as far as getting things on our website, not for resources, but just saying, there are other options, and having our groups and things like that if we can get those folks, maybe we won't lose as many as we have to, in spite of everything that the FDA is doing to make sure that
It's
happens.
not the people that we're going to lose. It's the people who aren't going to start vaping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
So-
that's what I meant. They would buy the thing in the gas station, like a
Well,
person who
that's
smokes would
gonna
buy the
be
thing in the gas station, and then they go, well, that this isn't quite doing it for me. What do I do now? And then they go back to smoking, or can we maybe help them make that transition?
It is good too that there's like vape is still thriving in some countries, and the numbers in those countries are going up and up and up. So, when let's say you have that going on for years and years and years, people that smoke in this country are going to get wind of that and get exposed to it from that outlet.
Plus the YouTube videos. I mean, when I first started this, there were like no YouTube videos. There was Leaford.
As soon as the FDA authorizes some products, some serious products, by which I mean like the Juul, the Views Alto, that stuff is going to be advertised like crazy.
Yeah.
Those companies are going to they're going to put money into advertising once.
Aren't they going to ban all the advertising like they did with cigarettes, though? You don't think that'll happen?
They never banned any advertising on cigarettes. The cigarette
Well, you know what I mean.
Not to advertise.
On some outlets.
But they're already advertising like crazy.
They're not advertising like crazy. Once they have an authorization, they'll really put money into it.
Right.
I'm telling you, nobody's going to not know about vaping.
No.
It's not. We're not going back to 2009.
No, we're not. And I just keep hoping that if all we're left with in the easily accessible market are, these kind of products, my hope is that the FDA process doesn't completely stifle innovation, because I'd like to see those products improve because they still suck. Just putting that out.
I'm more worried about the Chinese process stifling innovation.
Well,
they're apparently vape products sold in China are only going to be tobacco flavor as of
Yeah, they just banned flavor.
But you know what? They weren't really using the more advanced refillable stuff much anyway. I mean, it was Relax, which was the one, number one brand there. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think the Chinese are going to continue making stuff for other markets, but
that's the hope. But right now, nobody's 100% sure that they're not going to enforce their domestic rules on products aimed outside of the country. So,
and China is one government I wouldn't want to.
Well, they'd still be able to make like refillable gear, but they wouldn't like something like a disposable. They wouldn't be able to fill them with flavored product in China, I suppose.
And Damien had made the point that one of the problems with being an ambassador right now is all the misinformation out there, and I would totally agree with that. But I personally have found that it's really helpful when I say, "Oh, yeah," when they say, "Oh, that stuff will kill you," I would say, if you had asked me X number of years ago, I would have said, "Yeah, that's really bad." But here's what I've learned over the years. And, you got to try. I mean, you got to try. But it's really hard when somebody's smoking a cigarette looking at you saying, yeah, that shit's going to kill you.
Yeah. Well, and since the pandemic, people are trusting the FDA and CDC less and less. So you can say, well, who says that? It's the FDA and CDC. How much do you trust them?
Julie, that's a sales technique,
Yeah.
That's the feel, felt, found technique. I used to feel the same way.
Yeah. But it works. But what happens is when you argue with people and you just say you're an idiot,
that doesn't
wrong. What happens? No. They just completely shut down. But if you show that you're hearing what they're saying, you're listening and actually agreeing with them on some level, then they don't completely shut down, and maybe a tiny bit gets in there.
My number one advice for debating with people online, because if anyone follows me on Twitter, you'll see. Well, I do it online. I do it on Twitter. Find something that you can agree upon. It disarms people who think that you're just going to teeth out, balls to the wall fight when you say, you know what, I do agree with you on that. But there is something like find things to agree on or find a way to compliment them in the middle of the argument, and it will throw them for a loop, and you will have an easier, you may not, convince them of everything, but you will have a more civil discourse. I can say this.
So Ian Thomas asked, do you think FDA are going to drag their heels for as long as possible to avoid giving any decent product and by association all nicotine vaping positive PR?
That's a good question.
It is a good question.
Let me pull out my crystal ball.
Well, I think
part
that's
of-
probably one reason why the Juul application is not
Yep.
gone all the way
I
through.
think part of that is also that they are in the process of finding a FDA commissioner, and now they're in the process of finding a Center for
CTP.
Tobacco Products director. I think that once those two people get in their jobs and talk to each other, then you'll start seeing some stuff get authorized. But who knows for sure? You might be right that they'll drag their heels forever.
You'd think with the well-oiled bureaucracy that is FDA,
Oh,
CDC,
well-oiled
and so on, that it would just the institutional knowledge would just carry over, automatically, and it doesn't matter who's in charge. They
The
just
place
know.
runs like a Swiss watch.
Right.
What we're also going to see, though, is, decisions coming out of the FDA that are going to be colored by the political beliefs.
True.
I'm just going to say it. I think that a lot of the impetus to, really get down and enforce is going to come down to the leadership in the FDA. And I think there's going to be more appetite for enforcing as time goes on. I think there's going to be less appetite for approving anything. And I do think that they might I don't think they're going to drag their heels too much longer on some of the larger player stuff. But I do think the first e-liquid that gets approved is going to be huge.
Yeah,
It's going to be huge.
If
And
it ever happens.
I think that as soon as they do that, if they do that, there's going to be a hue and cry from the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids and the Untruthful Initiative. I think it's just going to be, and I don't think anybody wants that fight. So yeah, I think they're going to drag their heels on the open system market. That's my crystal ball.
Well, if it's tobacco, I mean, they're probably going to approve a tobacco flavor, if anything, if they do approve open system stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there might be less pushback on that, but who knows?
Yeah. My beloved grape crush is gone.
If
Well,
they
push
approve
back on the
if they-
views, which is just tobacco and menthol, they push back on that. Oh, how can they do that? It's like
if they approve open system e-liquid, that's when we'll all of a sudden see a bunch of kids getting poisoned from drinking nicotine again.
Yeah.
That'll be like the new news stories that'll start popping up before or right after.
So, I want to ask Jim one real quick question, then I've got to go because I'm watching Batman tonight. Movie.
The Batman.
I got to go pick up my dogs.
But Jim, I've been seeing some posts out there with people saying, businesses are saying that they're going to advertise their e-liquids as not being used for electronic cigarettes, but instead to make tinctures and oral stuff and pack, not for vaping. That's not going to fly.
Well, that doesn't matter because the FDA regulates any product with nicotine except for medical products.
And they actually do regulate the medical stuff.
products.
Well, I
Yes.
mean the Center for Tobacco Products.
CTP doesn't. Yeah.
Right.
Any consumer product, any over-the-counter product.
It's not just for vaping. It's the question of the nicotine.
That's right. They also regulate nicotine pouches, lozenges, toothpicks, any.
But the fact that
product,
you put it in your mouth is not going to fly. Just thought
unless it's a medical product. Unless
it's a medical product, but then you have to have medical approval.
I mean, even there were, I've never used or seen these products, but there were like hand gels, the transdermal.
Listen, I use nicotine water.
So like anything, like even if you're just wearing a nicotine salve or something like that, it's still nicotine. It's still
nicotine water tastes really bad. Just in case
don't
anybody
drink it.
That sounds bad.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a good time.
So you can't just call your e-liquid a nicotine lubricant anymore either.
But without nicotine, you could be selling aromatherapy, guys. I mean, if there's aromatherapy businesses could be huge. You know what I'm saying? Can't have nicotine in them, but.
So I think that the reason people are interested in that idea, Julie, is that they think they could use the U.S. mail to ship the stuff if it's not intended for vaporization.
Yeah.
I don't think that'll fly if they get caught.
Yeah.
I think a lot of companies don't care if they get caught, and good on them. You know,
Well,
I mean,
the first
I
time
gotta-
the FDA comes after you, they send you a nasty
letter.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not encouraging companies to do this,
No.
but I'm just saying, as a consumer, go out and look for this stuff. It's, you know, this is
Still
everything's
there.
not going to disappear tomorrow, and there's going to be companies out there that, you know, but be careful. You know, I would suggest using some kind of third party processing if you can, because, you know, there's going to be some shady people taking advantage of desperate vapors. So be careful on who you're giving your money to. But again, we're going to you have the CASAA groups that you can join. We have a state group. You have, you know, the e-cigarette forum. You've got places you can ask people, you know, who did you go to, you know, and do it in private. Again, there's nothing illegal for you to do this. You just don't want to out the companies who are still trying to help people quit smoking, you know, and look around. Don't give up and think that you're just not going to get it. There are ways to do it. And like I said, this community really wants to help. So, Julie just like,
I got to jump
Julie,
out. too,
Julie had
guys.
a hard stop.
Yeah.
I know she didn't say goodbye though. She could have said goodbye.
I got to jump out too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you
everyone.
so much,
Thanks, Matt.
Matt.
And,
And thank you,
Nice chatting with you
Julie.
guys.
I'm sorry that she's got to go see Batman. The Batman.
The
so
Batman.
again,
Okay.
let's remind everybody that this is all it does is give the FDA authorization or authority over synthetic nicotine. All the legal products that are on the market now, tens of thousands of them, are still there. There's no
Right.
reason to freak out. Kristen, you're freaking out.
I'm not freaking out. I know I can
Well,
do
I
it, but
know,
I'm
I-
watching
I-
people online freak out. I am the member coordinator. I'm the one watching all this
Yeah, but
social
why
media.
are they
So
freaking out? There's
I
still
wanted
all
to
kinds
calm
of
them
stuff.
down and have them not freak out. And, you know, you guys helped me too, because you made me think of things, because I'm trying to think of what can I tell these people.
So the
And you guys
people who
helped me
ought to
think of
be
stuff.
freaking out are people who are, you know, e-liquid companies that have like converted their whole product line over to synthetic. They should be freaking out. But what they're doing is like looking for ways to fight back. So, I mean, they might be freaking out, but we've had a lot of apocalypses through the years in vaping.
A lot of people don't know that, though. Some people have just gotten on board in the last year or two. So
We're
No,
here to
yeah,
tell
it's
you,
a good
vaping
point.
has been over several times in the course of the last, 15, 20 years?
But again, I mean, you know, I don't want to fuel panic here, and it's never really been part of our, you know, mission to, you know, get people all worked up. And you know, we are certainly not. We have been actually criticized for not using events like this to fundraise, which we just don't do. But you know, the reality of the situation is that there are vape shops closing. Vape shops have been closing for 6 years now, and people are losing access. And I know, we know the consequences of regulation like this. First of all, you know, this is part and parcel with the campaign against nicotine, period. This is part of this expanded drug war. And, you know, the unfortunate reality here is that people who did lose access to a vape shop, they don't want to buy the gas station vapes. They are going to be buying products on an underground market, as we have just described, exposing people to all kinds of fraud, unsafe products. And there are no legal recourses. You know, you become that person where now you're in a position to drop the dime on somebody who might be armed. You know, they're not in this. They're not necessarily in the business to make sure that you're living healthy. They're in this to make money. And so certainly there are plenty of people out there who will continue doing their business because this is arguably an act of self-defense to continue selling these products, even though they may be illegal. But it's just, you know, I think for some people out there, it is getting shady, and I think their sense of panic is legitimate. But I you know, I hope, as you know, Jim, as you said, and as we have noted, the thousands of products that are still out there, I hope that will be enough to carry some people through. I hope that when tobacco companies get their PMTAs, that they do promote this stuff aggressively, not just in TV, radio, and print, but on the power wall at the convenience store. I've already seen, you know, Zyn is a good example. I was at the SnoozeCon where they unveiled their new marketing, which is a bright white kind of dispenser that is, your eye goes right to it on that wall with all the packs of cigarettes. I would expect, I hope to see similar marketing for other smoke-free products like vaping. And yeah, as we've all noted, like, how many times have they tried to kill this? And we know we are all on the right side of history here. And the really crappy thing about that means you just get beat up a lot. But eventually, hopefully we live to see the movement here triumph. But in the meantime, I don't want to encourage people to put themselves in unnecessary danger to buy these products. But that's the reality. That's the world that our government has created. And it's unfortunate. It's disgusting. Unfortunate, it doesn't quite cover it. It's disgusting.
And we have a lot of people on the board and stuff and in our groups who have a lot of connections. We've got a vape shop owner or two in our chat right now. If you want to message me, I will. If you need help, I will try to connect you with whoever. And even if I have to ask one of the board directors, we're here for you. We will help you as much as we can as consumers, because that's what we're here for. We're consumer advocates. We want to advocate for you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to downplay anybody's legitimate concerns about what's happening. You do have a legitimate concern. I'm just saying, people who are committed vapors who've been at this for a while are not likely to go back to smoking. There are options, even if they're not the best options.
Right.
So please look for the options.
Also consistent with a lot of things that we've said in the past is please don't go back to smoking. There are plenty of options out there. You can find them on our website as well. Things that you will be able to, and it's not just vaping, but things that you will be able to find in the convenience store.
That's actually something I was going to highlight, Alex, is, if you are somebody who find yourself in a predicament where you can't get any product whatsoever, you don't have access, even to, I don't know, views or something, whatever, which is highly unlikely. But there are other products. There's other smoke-free products out there that are very good. That may be something to consider if you've never given snus a try. Now may be an opportune moment to give snus a try.
Or
so there are other
or nicotine pouches,
smoke-free products out there.
You don't want tobacco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who knows? You may find that you enjoy it more. You never know.
Let's hope that we all live to see. At least I hope I live to see it. The day that Raja Krishnamurthy is supporting the pro-vaping bill.
Right?
That will ever happen.
Sean,
the man still supports the drug war. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've got people like Durbin supporting marijuana legalization. Durbin in the 90s was not supporting marijuana legalization.
I just want to answer Sean. He said, please post this webinar as a replay to share. It's saved on our Facebook page, and it's also saved on our YouTube channel under live shows. So it's always, all of our old shows are available there still.
So are we sort of coming to the end here? Are there any kind of finer points that we didn't address?
I don't think so. I mean, if you guys have any questions, and again, I am the member coordinator for CASAA. If you have any questions, if you need any help, if you want me to ask somebody else about something, we have a lot of resources. Danielle's put together this fantastic website. Jim and Logan and Alex and Julie and just Matt. I mean, there's just huge brain source here. So that's what we're here for. We're here to advocate for you guys. So and we need you too. So make sure that you're joining and you're part of our groups, and Logan will give the spiel later.
I've got one more suggestion. Anybody who's watching this is probably already a CASAA member. So I'm not going to say, join CASAA.
We always say it anyhow.
Donate to
Jim,
CASAA.
that's my line.
I'm not going to beg for money in this crucial and dangerous moment. But if you're shopping at vape shops, would you talk to your vape shop owner and ask what they're doing?
True.
Or smoke shops. Smoke shop
Or
owners.
smoke shops. Ask what they're doing. Ask if maybe they could suggest that, stick something up on their counter about CASAA, or if they're a dedicated vaping business, they should probably join a trade group, and there are some good ones. There's
Mark
one
said
good one.
Mark says he just sent us 2 new members half an hour ago, which is why I was late today. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
I'd love to talk to Mark about what he's planning on doing with all this. I kind of wanted to have a vape shop owner on this today, but we just couldn't get someone together.
So
Mark's too busy working.
We see the
daily
same
lives.
names over and over in the vaping industry, defending vaping and lobbying and going to Washington and stuff. And there are still a lot of vaping businesses that don't support those efforts. So if you're buying e-liquid from a company that's not an AVM member, they should probably join.
Yeah.
Don't feel bad about telling them that, because it's these companies sticking together and pooling their resources that are going to help get better laws.
Agreed. There's strength in numbers for sure.
Well,
Yeah. That's a consumer advocate thing that you guys can do, is to get the word out and insist that where you get your supplies from, that you get it from somebody who's supporting advocacy. And how hard is it to put up one of our flyers on their wall? I mean, really.
I was fortunate enough to learn about CASAA through my local vape shop, which unfortunately recently did finally close their doors. But yeah, I mean, there was, I don't recall any like actual print up anywhere about CASAA, but I was definitely told like, hey, you should go check out CASAA.org.
Danielle, do we have any?
Became a member.
Danielle, do we have any of those flyers that we used to have up that had the CASAA information that the shops could put up? Do we still have those downloads on the website?
We do. We have under the resources section, there is a printables area. I've got posters for you to take to rallies if you wanted. I have trifold brochures. I've got a 1-page flyer that you can print out that has, frequently asked questions and CASAA's website. There are definitely, things that you can print out and display at the shop for sure. If you want something very specific, listen, reach out and I can probably whip something up for you. But I did create, those graphics for people to be able to use, especially that one sheet, which is pretty cheap to print out.
And honestly, I'm guilty. I need to print one out and take it up to my local vape shop, because although he's done advocacy, we've been at hearings together, so I know he supports advocacy. He doesn't have a flyer saying CASAA at the shop, so I'm going to have to ask him if I can put one of those up.
Just walk in and nonchalantly tape it to the wall.
I mean, that's something you can do as a consumer. Bring a flyer in and say, hey, can you put this up? This is fighting for your business and for me to be able to keep buying your products, so.
Excellent point.
Yeah, or if somebody wanted to put a tip jar out for us, that would be
great.
Amazing, you guys. Does cost money to run this organization. We're not trying to, we don't hit you over the head with fundraising, but we do have to do it sometimes, unfortunately.
If you do a tip jar in southeastern Michigan, I'll be glad to stop by and pick it up.
There we go. Perfect. You don't even have to, do anything crazy.
Yeah, and don't forget the t-shirts.
Exactly. You guys, I have painstakingly spent time to create some trendy, fabulous t-shirt designs for you. They're in our shop. You can get an awesome shirt. You're a walking billboard for tobacco harm reduction advocacy. I've seen it inspire conversations, right? One of my favorite things to do is wear a CASAA t-shirt and then go stand in the smoking section and vape and have people come up to me. You guys, it's amazing. So many great conversations. Look at all the different, you can have these in t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, sweatshirts, little vape bags that you can store your stuff in, all kinds of different stuff. And we get a few bucks whenever you buy something. You get something, we get something. It's a win-win. Please don't forget about the shop.
Skip's bringing up the battery cases.
You just need to be in sales,
Alex.
like across the board.
Been there, done that. I like advocacy better.
Yeah.
Alex, Skip's talking about the battery cases.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't that like the bane of your existence for a while?
He still has thousands
of battery cases.
If you want them, contact Alex.
Yes, if you need some cases, for sure. All right. So hey, Jim, Danielle, thank you so much. Really appreciate this. Is last minute. I just started badgering these guys. Was it last night? Yeah, late last night, and said, can you guys come on, please? And they came through, and thank you so much for doing that. And it's just been very informative. And yes, Jim, I'm calmed down, Mudgeon. I'll get off your lawn now, Jim.
Enjoy the nicotine.
But yeah, thank you. So if you guys want to hang out, you can hang out with us while Alex does his thing. Otherwise, you're welcome to say goodbye, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
All righty.
Bye, guys.
Right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So,
all right.
With that, should we
we
do the thing that we do?
Do you want me to do the thing that we
She
do?
wants to do the thing.
Okay, I'll do the thing that we do. Are you ready?
Do that
Let's
thing.
do it. All
Okay.
right, Alex.
I just realized I didn't have the ticker on this whole show. I've just been so engrossed in everything we've been talking about. So.
That's okay.
No ticker. Well, we have a ticker now.
We
We
got
have
the
it.
ticker now.
I put it up. I put the ticker.
All right, Alex, what do you have for us this week as far as ominous legislation is concerned?
Yeah. So for those who stuck around, we're going coast to almost coast here. And we'll start in Connecticut, where we don't have the campaign up for this just yet. But Connecticut is looking at a flavor ban again. And I, of course, closed my notes on this. I believe it is Senate Bill 367. And there is a hearing. Yes. Connecticut. Here we go. Come on, let me get the notes open here. Senate Bill 367. There is a public hearing in the Joint Committee on Public Health on Monday, March 14th at 9 a.m. Word on the ground in Connecticut is, the chair of this committee is the bill sponsor. So there's a really high likelihood that this is going to pass this committee. It's not the end of the process, but the advice to us was sort of keep our powder dry, and we can engage our consumer membership in Connecticut when this starts to move. I will be submitting testimony against this bill. Several others are submitting testimony. We will put up something on our website probably tomorrow morning. So if you are in Connecticut, there will be an easy way for you to contact committee members and share your opposition. But we're not going full court press on this just yet because it's pretty much a certainty that this is going to get through this committee. So again, SB 367 in Connecticut, public hearing on Monday. So there's Monday. On Tuesday, we're going to go to Tennessee, which we haven't spent a whole lot of time in over the years because the Tennessee associations have been very well organized and managed to keep a lot of this stuff from getting to a point where it's likely to pass. But this is kind of the new thing that we're seeing around the country. We noted this earlier. What this is a product registry. It would require anybody selling, or I'm sorry, any of the manufacturers or anybody who is selling their product in the state to be registered with the state. And in order to be included in this registry, your product has to have gone through PMTA or received some sort of marketing authorization from FDA. This is a little extra confusing. Tennessee is not an open book when it comes to seeing how the bills are progressing, what changes are being made, when those changes are being made. And so if you go to look up these bill numbers, you're going to find bills that have, one of these has nothing to do with vaping. It's about funding state parks. But the word from the lobbyist on the ground in Tennessee, we don't have a lobbyist, is that these bills are being amended to include language from other legislation. And this language is, of course, the product registry, or as we call around the water cooler here at CASAA, which we don't have a water cooler, but if we did, around it, we would say these are the PMTA NARC list bills. And essentially what they do is they put the burden of enforcing federal regulations onto the state, and people who pay taxes in that state, of course, are going to be paying for that. The real kind of macro critique of this legislation is, of course, that the FDA regulation is a failure, and states shouldn't be lining up to support bad policy at the federal level. And so we're asking people to call and send messages. If all you can do very quickly is send an email, we have that set up. It's going to the committees, it's going to committee staff. But of course, if you want the extra credit, here's a big phone list of all the committee members, and you can just take some time and go down that list and make phone calls and urge them to oppose these bills. Even included some convenient talking points for you here. Be sure to check out all of these resources so that your messages can be comprehensive and as compelling as possible. Again, this is Tennessee. And as I said, the bill numbers for this, I did some digging around. So the language that we're opposed to here is in House Bill 2705 and Senate Bill 2219. If you're a little bit dyslexic when it comes to numbers and stuff like me, then it's going to get super confusing, because the bills that we're going to see all this language moved into are SB 2143 and HB 2119, which, by the way, is the numbers on our PO box here in Plattsburgh. So I know I've thrown out a whole lot of confusing information to people there, but it's easy and a little bit more understandable on the call to action. So if you're in Tennessee, definitely take a look at this. If you have friends in Tennessee, share this widely and get everybody engaged. This is not going to be the end of this. This is a trend going across the country. As I mentioned, the tobacco companies, Juul, anybody, really, well, not anybody, but the big players that have gotten through PMTA or on the verge of getting through PMTA are generally supportive of this. But certainly other people in the industry are not, because they believe that people should have the freedom to choose safer products. And so, yeah, that's that. So this is coming up on Tuesday, March 15th. One of the meetings is at noon. The other meeting is at 2 p.m. And phone calls are definitely going to be the most helpful thing here. If you want a little bit of background, a more detailed version of what I just said, we also have the Why is CASAA opposed to the State Product Registry for Safer Nicotine Products. Hopefully all of that goes to contributing to making your messages compelling. And as we said, always, be nice and polite. That tends to win more friends than you know. So we got Connecticut, Tennessee, and the last one is really just a reminder, because we're coming up on the hearing. Colorado. This is HB 1064. And the public hearing for this is on Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. And several people that we know and love have signed up to testify against this. If you are in Colorado, please make sure to send in your messages, make your phone calls, and do note that this is being held in the Old State Library, which is room 271. This is a larger venue. So expect a lot of people to show up, expect a lot of testimony. If you really do want to speak, prepare for a very, very short testimony. And I think with that, we're done with the legislative rundown.
Wow, that was quick.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm muted. There we go. Sorry. Just over
We
here
do
talking
have that
about
Washington thing coming up in May, I think it is, just to keep people if you're in Washington state, keep that on your radar, but they're going to have that vote for the statewide thing.
So you have statewide elections in May in Washington.
Yeah, I think it was May. I forget which date it was, but I think I messaged you in Skype on that one. But
well,
we're
we'll
keeping
definitely
an eye
come
on
back
it.
to that.
You guys don't freak out in Washington, but there's only so much we can do at this point when it goes to voters.
Yeah, when it comes to ballot initiatives, there's not much that we're able to get involved in. Usually fighting a ballot initiative costs upwards of millions of dollars, and it's just not something that we have the resource for. So again, we'll be leaning heavily on people in that state to, sort of through word of mouth, try to convince your friends and neighbors why, I think is it a flavor ban in Washington state? Yeah, why that's a bad idea. So that will, and of course, come April, we'll probably be touching back on that again.
I only bring it up because they just had an article on it again lately, and some people might have seen it. So I just wanted to let you guys know we are still watching it.
Cool. All right, and that's that.
That's that. All right. So, great discussion today. I not only did I really just enjoy everybody's, the entire discussion today, it was kind of nice because I got to sit back a lot. Have to let Jim and Danielle and Julie and Kristen and Matt just kind of.
Oh, we got one. Hold on, one more thing. What about the Iowa wholesale vape tax, Alex?
Iowa.
Let's go. Yeah, I've been. This has been a lot of what's on fire this morning.
I know that's on our radar because I remember seeing all the.
Yeah, I
conversation about it.
believe we do have a call to action for this. Sorry, I'm trying to fill the dead air here.
Do you want me to start singing?
No. So as far as I have not updated this yet, I'll have to dig into it. We do have an engagement up for this. Let me get it back up on the screen here. If you are in Iowa, there is a bill that would impose a 22% wholesale tax on vapor products. That's HF 2523. The last time I looked at this, so it's been a little over a week now, and I don't have any update as far as whether or not this is going to a committee. I mean, I am in contact with people in Iowa, and I may have missed something, but let's double check here. So I'm not going to share my screen.
I don't think I've seen anything else come up. Besides,
I'm always afraid that I miss something like this.
Remember, guys, grassroots AF. And this is another good reason why we love having you guys in our state Facebook groups, because you can help us keep on top of these things and keep them fresh, because sometimes they come so fast that Alex has just enough time to get the calls to action out. And then if something moves on it, to go back and update it again sometimes can be, it's a lot for him to juggle. So having you guys in those groups and just kind of giving us a little nudge. I love our mods, because our moderators for our groups, because they do that to us all the time, and I'll send it off to Alex. So yeah, it's great if you guys are involved in our Facebook groups.
That's a good reminder that, CASAA is not just Alex watching 50 states and 30,000 municipalities, and it's not just the board. It's CASAA is all of us. CASAA is every member in every state group that's looking out for each other. CASAA is us. So absolutely.
Yeah, you guys are CASAA if you're members. It's all of us together. That's what makes up CASAA. We're just kind of here to try to coordinate things.
So to answer the question, this bill is still showing as introduced. It's introduced and referred to a committee, but as far as I can tell, just looking at our tracking, nothing has been scheduled as of yet. But I am in contact with folks in Iowa. So if something does happen, I expect to get a note from them, and we'll up the threat level here. But in the meantime, if you are in Iowa, take advantage of our engagement. It's a quick and easy way to get in touch with your lawmakers and express your opposition.
Now I see Danielle still in the chat, so I'm just going to put this up here so she can see that Mark was saying something, and then I'm going to do. Also, she said, we're only as strong as our membership, guys, which is something we keep saying over and over again. You guys getting involved is what makes us stronger and stronger. And that's why we need more and more people too. So, and Skip says she is shocked that she gets to tell Alex for another week that there's no state level news in Minnesota yet, but they're expecting action on a flavor ban, but all quiet so far.
Shocked and relieved.
Shocked and relieved. Yeah. Right. And thank God nothing's happened in Wisconsin. But Wisconsin did the same thing. We were talking about sneaking stuff into budgets. That Wisconsin tried to do the same thing with a tax. I forget what it was, 78% or something like that. They did the same thing. They snuck it into the state budget, and we had to go all over the state following them around, telling them, don't, no. So yeah, it's funny how they do that. That's not funny, just ironically funny. I don't know.
Well, on that note, are we? I think we should probably shut this thing down for the weekend.
I think so.
Nobody else has any other comments, and I think it's time to say goodbye. And Logan can do a spiel. But thank you guys, everybody, for coming. I hope people feel a little bit better about everything after this, and that we are here for you. We're not going anywhere. We've been fighting. That's one of the reasons why I wanted Julie on here, because Julie and I have been doing this since late 2009, early 2010, and we're just going to keep on keeping on, have your little, and then, okay, move on. Let's do it. And that's what I did yesterday on Twitter.
Everybody do just that.
Yeah.
So I hope you guys are feeling better and a little bit. I know it's a scary time. It's still gonna be a lot of work. It's still gonna be painful. It's kind of like the gas price thing for Ukraine. We're gonna have to suffer for a while with this vape thing. But if we stick together, if we work together, if we communicate, we can get through this. We can keep helping people transition off of cigarettes. We can still keep getting our supplies, and that's what we're here for you. And we're all, like Daniel said, we are all CASAA. We're all together in this. And I hope you feel a little bit better about everything after all these great people came on this show and joined us today. So sorry, that was my spiel. I wanted to get that one out. Logan, you're on.
I don't know if my spiel is going to, back up against that. That was a really good spiel. But yes, thank you everybody who tuned in today. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us while we hashed all of this out. This was a fantastic discussion today. I'd like to just say thank you again to all the board members that joined us today to have this discussion. For everybody out there listening, there will be 2 versions of this podcast available. They go up to SoundCloud, and I do want to ask if you guys like podcasts, if you are audiophiles like I am, follow us on SoundCloud. It's just CASAA Media, just like the rest of our social media is. Head over there, follow us. We just broke 200 followers on SoundCloud, which I'm personally really stoked about. And it definitely motivates us to keep doing these things. So follow us over there, like stuff, check it out. There's 2 versions available. The full version, you can listen to this entire podcast. And I also edit down just a small, shorter version of just Alex's legislative rundown. So if you've got a quick commute to work, or you're going for a jog, or whatever it is, and you've got 15, 20 minutes and you want to find out what's happening right now, you can tune into that, see what's going on, get involved, you guys. If you're not members of CASAA, leave right now and go join. It's absolutely free. Check it out. The more people we have, the more members we have, the stronger we are. And just like Danielle said, we are only as strong as our membership. And that's all of us. That's everybody here. So thank you guys one last time. We don't have anything going on next week. We're all here, I believe. No sneaky little.
We should all be here. We don't have any guests lined up yet, but our Twitter space is on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And hopefully we'll get some good guests like we have in the past.
Yeah. I was just that was my next thing, was the Twitter space. Here pretty soon. I'm sure probably about maybe Monday. Kristen, you usually start posting about that Monday, something like that on Twitter.
Whenever I'm told about it is what I do.
Okay, so yeah, like Monday, Tuesday, we'll have a tweet out about it, and I'll write on those Twitter space tweets, those heads up kind of tweets. You can click the little set reminder button so that way you get a notification. So when you see that tweet, set that reminder, set it and forget it, and your phone will ding at you when we're all live and chatting again. So that should do it for us. Same time here as far as CASAA Live is concerned. Same time next week, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 over on the other coast. Google foo for the rest of the world, you guys. Thank you. Much love. Everybody be excellent to each other out there, and we'll chat with you soon.
Yeah.